están en este momento como escucharon, están lanzando fuegos pirotécnicos.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am super excited to have our next guest on here. She's very amazing with the way that she presents her arguments. She's a news anchor. She's on the West Coast, which was kind of a little hurdle that we hit when we were trying to schedule things. But without further ado, guys, Viviana Serrade, I hope I said that correctly. Thank you so much for being here.
That was pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And yes, it was kind of fun because, of course, you're in the East Coast and I'm in the West Coast, and you're 3 hours ahead. And I remember you texting me like, "Hey, are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we still have like 3 more hours, dude. What's the issue?"
Yeah.
And then it's like, "Oh, wait, hold on. We're in different like sides of the country." So
yeah, now when I schedule with
it.
people, it's funny because, you know, I'll get texts back from them at like 2:30 in the morning and I'm like, why are they up so late? But then I remember, oh, they're East Coast. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's like 11. So they're probably just getting home. So no, absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm super excited to be able to talk to you because there's a couple things that I want to discuss, right? I want to talk about Latino representation in the media and on the conservative side of things specifically. I also want to talk about your experiences covering some of, you know, the past couple years' biggest stories. And I want to just kind of go into what your perspective has been through all these. So I guess a good place to start is maybe just like a little introduction into who you are, what you've been doing lately. You don't have to give any specifics you don't want to, but just give us a little overview of what you do.
Absolutely. So as you can tell, I have an accent. So I was not born or raised here. Actually, I was born and raised in Ecuador, South America, next to Colombia, next to Peru. I moved to the US when I was 17. I went to college here. I went to Cal State Fullerton. I got my degree in communications with an emphasis in broadcast TV. And then after that, I started working for an affiliate of Fox in Spanish in LA. And then I transferred to a different company, and now I anchor part-time and I'm a field reporter part-time. And that's basically that.
That's amazing. And if I know correctly, and if I've seen it correctly, I think you're also in acting and you're doing some stuff in that area as well, right? So in the arts.
We shouldn't say that because then that movie or that program is gonna get canceled.
Maybe the Daily Wire will hire you. It's okay.
Hey, Gina Carano, there you go.
There you
exactly.
Go. Okay,
yes,
so
true.
So let's start here. What was the first, I guess, story that broke where you kind of thought to yourself, "Oh, I'm actually in danger while I'm covering these stories"? What was the first time where you kind of looked back and said, like, "I need to be careful about what I'm doing"?
I mean, we deal with a lot of shootings, a lot of homicides, and particularly those kind of stories because they're crime, because there's a suspect. They can be very touchy because sometimes the scene, the body of the victim is still there, right? And so you have a perimeter, you have the yellow tape, and when you arrive at the scene, sometimes you have family members of the victim or sometimes family members of the person who committed the crime. So it's difficult because you are there to do your job. You are there to interview the people who are going through this. But of course, they're going through a horrible time in their lives. And now you are trying to put a mic and a camera in front of their faces. And I understand how that could be perceived as something inhumane, horrible, and disgusting from the media, but at the same time we're trying to help. We're just doing our job because in so many cases of these homicides, they're still looking for the suspect. And I can tell you that it's one thing me telling the story and a completely different story when we have a family member telling the audience that they need their help because the assailant is still at large. But I would say we have those moments on a regular basis, especially here in LA, you know, the crime, how the increment. So we have that on a daily basis. However, I think the time that I actually got scared for my own safety and my coworker, which is my camera guy, my photog, is during last summer for the George Floyd protest.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, we were the only media when the protests started here in downtown LA, they took over the freeway, and that we were there. We were the only media. Actually, the police car, the CHP, almost ran over my camera guy because we were so close to it. Um, and, yeah, so I've been threatened, I've been pushed, I've been shoved. People have sending me threats through the internet, through Instagram,
Wow.
because they don't like what I'm reporting, even though it's the truth. They don't like what I show them, and yeah, they threaten us. They even one time they threw fireworks at me towards like the area of my face, my head, and they actually exploded right next to me, and I was
Wow.
live. Yes, exactly. And also my camera guy, he took two rocks to the head and also a glass bottle. He ended up with a concussion in the hospital, bleeding, and we definitely realized at that time that these kind of riots, because at the beginning they start peacefully, but they turn into a riot. They become violent.
Right.
So definitely during this summer is when I became aware of how dangerous this job truly is.
Out of curiosity, when you're covering
Mhm.
something like that and you're one of the only people who are in media there, I find it fascinating that on the one hand, you're only media, like they don't necessarily know your politics when you're going in there, nor should you be saying it, but it's interesting to me that people who are rioting, that people that are doing that from, I'll say from the left, right? They target the media in ways that are almost more dramatic than the way they target the police. I've seen this with like, kind of, rogue journalists like Barely Informed with Elad and stuff. This happens a lot to him. People will just see him with a cameraman and they'll just start attacking. And to me, it almost seems like they understand what the ramifications are going to be on the television when people see all this. So they're trying to stop that before it gets to that place. Do you think that that's one of their motives, or do you think that it's just chaos?
It's a combination of absolutely everything, but I do believe at the same time there are people who are there to exercise their First Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
and they have all the right to do so. There's people who take advantage of those situations, and that's when those incidents become volatile. And you are absolutely right. They know that the moment that a news crew gets them vandalizing, looting, burning a building down, they're gonna be on national TV possibly, and they know that's gonna have some repercussions, and they don't like that. They hate it.
Right.
So they become very violent towards the media.
Mm-hmm.
There's been plenty of times that they have actually thrown like towels, blankets on top
For
of
your
the camera,
cameras.
on top of my camera guy. They have pushed us away. They have told us, "Oh, if you don't leave right now, something's bad going to happen to you," because they know we're recording them. And many times, another tactic that they use is that they create like a barrier with all of the different members. They
I've
create a
seen this.
barrier that way you can move, you can see with your camera. And sometimes I've also seen it, they take their jackets off and they kind of just create this barrier again, that way you can shoot whatever they're doing.
Right.
So they're smart, they absolutely know what they're doing,
I was
and they
gonna
don't want to
say
get
that
recorded.
it's very tactical the way that they do these things,
Of course.
and it's very organized. It seems like they're meeting up ahead of time to plan these things out and almost kind of formulate a plan. When I was in DC, a few months ago during when the first Stop the Steal events were happening, and during the day everything was great, everything was fine. Peaceful assembly. Everybody's protesting. But then once it became nighttime, that's when you really saw things kind of start to heat up. You had different groups of people that, and I won't mention them because of YouTube, but different groups of people that were like coming together essentially because they wanted to fight each other. And there was a lot of that. Anybody that had a camera, anybody that looked like media, they were first priority to get them blocked, get them out of the way, get them to not be there, because the narrative. So I'll give you a little anecdote to kind of show you what I'm talking about. I went to the White House with Blexit, an organization that Candace Owens helped found. And I got invited with a group of minorities essentially to talk with the president, and it was going to be on the South Lawn, and everything happened. Before the entire event finished, there was already rumors going around that the media was not going to cover the event, but instead was going to say that Blexit was paying minorities to be at the White House. And I didn't think that they would be that blatant about it. But then by the time I got home, it was all over the news. You know, Brexit pays minorities to go to speech with the president, and me being there, I can attest to that. That's not how it was. Do you think that the things that happened during the George Floyd riots or all these things, do you think that the media is actively showing even bits of it, or do you think that there's something that they're trying to maybe not shine a light on?
I'm gonna play devil advocate right here because I've been there. I know that as a reporter you're afraid. I know that you are very likely gonna be attacked physically, assaulted physically as well, and I have. And a lot of my coworkers from other news stations have been in the same situation. And many times it's not up to the reporter. People really need to understand that the reporter. I don't have a per se, I don't have a say whether I choose a story or not. The producer is my boss. The producer tells me, hey, Viviana, you're gonna go report on this or whatever. So I could definitely advise my producer, hey, or how about if we do this story? But at the end of the day, it's my producer who has the last word.
Interesting.
So for people to understand that, the reporter does not have the last word, the last say, whether they choose a story or not. So many times right now, what many news companies are doing, they're deciding not to cover those events because of the possibility of being injured. And many times, instead, we use something that's called stringers. The stringers are videographers, photogs that just go to the scene, they record, and then they send it to different news media outlets for an amount of money. And then we of course, we buy it, and then we air it. So I don't personally think news outlets, from my own experience, are not covering stories on purpose. I think they're afraid, and there's many times that when you arrive to a story and you try to cover the story, when you try to talk to people in regards of that story, especially protest, they don't want you there.
Yeah.
And they become hostile towards you. And it's scary. I've been there. So you just rather, like, I don't want to put my life in danger, so probably just go to the corner, try to record as much as you can, and even then sometimes they chase after you.
Right. We saw that a lot with the Chaz and Chop thing that was going on in Seattle. They were literally chasing down reporters, independent journalists, and beating them, or in some cases, taking shots at them with guns. One of the things that comes to mind is, so you mentioned stringers, I believe they're called. One of the things that comes to mind is, like, my head automatically goes to, how can this be used for self-gain, right? Because I think this is a capitalistic society. People are ultimately looking to make money. How can they make money most effectively? Even in the news media, what I'm imagining is that maybe a news station, and I want to separate this from you because this has nothing to do with like who you work for or anything like that, but just in general, the institution of news media. Would there be situations where people, let's say, sell their tapes, and the media company buys the tapes in order to not show them, or buys the footage in order to not show them so that nobody else has the footage? Or do you think that the independent journalist would also be like, publish it anyway?
Okay. So I think that's like a two-answer part question, basically. So personally, I don't think I have ever witnessed any news. Well, I wouldn't know because I don't work at every single news station company, obviously. So I wouldn't know if they're buying the footage of this amazing or horrible thing, and then they decide not to air it. I probably don't think I believe that, because you are in the business of news. You are in the business of shocking people. Because let's be honest, we are selling a content, and the content is shocking people because the most shocking content gets the more ratings. So I don't think they're keeping the video because they have an agenda. I personally haven't seen it. I don't think so. But what I have seen is that they buy a video from maybe a witness, or from a witness, and the video is so good that they actually buy the rights of the video.
I see.
That way, another station, if they want to use the video from that company, they need to use like the watermark, or they need to give courtesy to that particular station. I have seen that.
Interesting. Wow, no, that's super helpful because it's interesting to know how I guess the streamlined process of from when the thing is recorded all the way to when it's shown on your television at home. It's interesting to know what's happening in those in between phases because I think me in particular, I didn't know that, and I think a lot of people that might be watching this don't know what that process is like. So I think just knowing that process helps us to stay informed and say, okay, what do I need to do to figure out whether this is truthful, whether the agenda is accurate, whether we're looking at quote unquote fake news, as our old president said, and stuff like that. I want to switch gears with you. I want to start talking about what we intended to talk about today, which was Latino representation and where that's looking, specifically for me being a conservative in my channel. What I see going on around in particular is that the conservative side of politics doesn't necessarily have loud Latino voices. There are a handful, there are some, but to me, there's not the same amount of priority as, let's say, Black America. And I hate to pin people tribalistically against each other, but it's just how it is. What's your opinion on that? What are you seeing? Am I wrong? I know that's a big question.
I think right now we are at a time that, and of course, I can only speak from my own experience and from what I have seen in the time working as a reporter. I think many Latinos are discovering who they really are. I think after witnessing several of these new presidents and their new policies, they have realized whether those policies are aligning with their beliefs, correct, with their morals. And I think with time they might be switching from one side to the other because they realize, okay, they're selling me this product, but in reality I'm getting B product instead of A. And I think that will take time. I think right now with newcomers, with new immigrants, and now those immigrants having children, we're having a new wave of Latinos, with different ideas, with ideologies. And I think we are going to see more Latinos in the future with different beliefs as in comparison to what we have right now.
Right.
And of course, this is only going to change the more Latinos that we have in power, the more Latinos that are going to follow.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of time. It's pretty early right now. It's pretty soon in this political, world that we're living to see the correlation and between the amount of Latinos and the amount of Latinos that should be in power if they're like in comparison to the community or to the population. So we'll see that in the future though.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. One interesting, I guess, statistic that I heard about was Latinos as a community or as a people group in America specifically they skew younger than any other community or any other race in this country because we haven't been here as long. And so when people come here from another country and then they have a kid, we're just that first or second generation that's actually been here and are born and raised here. So it takes time for let's say, for me or for somebody that's in my situation to acquire the same amount of, let's say, skills, power, resources, whatever you want to call it, as somebody whose family's been here for 6 or 7 generations.
Yeah.
So when people start to talk about politics and they talk about the Latino community within specifically conservative politics, because there is a lot of representation on the Democrat side or the liberal side. When people talk about that, I like to think to myself, well, we're just figuring all this out as a people group. We're just figuring it all out. And it's like you said, it's going to take some time for people to kind of figure out why these ideas are so important to this country, right? Why is the Constitution such an important document? Sure, we know it intellectually because of school, but we haven't lived through it the way most people's families have, generation after generation. Is that
Right.
a proper assessment, or is there something maybe to add to that?
I believe that. I absolutely believe that 100%. Like you're saying, right now if you're first generation, if you're barely second generation, you're barely in many cases, and I'm not saying this by any means trying to put any Latinos down or anything like that. But many times we have immigrants who haven't had the opportunity to actually go to college or to even go to high school. So right now, when they get to the US, maybe their children are finishing high school and they're going to college for the first time. So we have barely the first generation that's actually completely educated.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be up to their children or grandchildren in my case, or even learning the language. Like right now, like I had to learn English.
Yeah.
And I went to college as well. So there's these little factors that play a huge role in the big picture, that we will see the result within some years. And you need to have in mind that predominantly Latinos, South America, Mexico, what are beliefs? What is a religion? Catholic. And then if you actually break it down, okay, so what do Latinos, what do Catholics believe? And even if you're not Catholic, you might be Christian, and the same thing, what do Catholics believe? What do Christians believe? And then you're going to realize, okay, so the values of Catholics and Christians align with this particular political party. And like I said, it's going to take time, but eventually we are gonna see a better, not scripture, we will see a better correlation between the population and the people in power, Latinos in power especially.
I love that. I think that's so true. It's interesting that you bring up Catholicism and Christianity, because it's a big part of what I talk about on this channel. I think there is a correlation between Latinos and being, let's say, Catholic more so than Christian, honestly, in their own countries. But I think that those values are kind of just a little bit being lost in first or second generation Latinos.
Yeah.
But what's happening now, I think, as an American culture, is those values are starting to bring up new conversations again, things that maybe somebody who's 20, 18, 20, 25 had never heard before, or even from their parents. And now they're thinking of things like traditional gender roles and, femininity and masculinity. And they're hearing all these conversations that were never accessible before the internet. So I think it's an interesting way to bring faith back to, I guess, the Latino community without kind of, going with the old traditional route of, let's say their parents teaching them or whatever.
Absolutely.
There was one thing I wanted to ask you. It slipped my mind. That never happens to me.
No worries. It happens to me all the time.
Having said all that, what do you think is good, what's the word? Advice for somebody, let's say somebody in your situation, they move to America, they want to be successful here. They don't necessarily have the luxury of having generations and generations of Americans behind them. Where do they start?
Right.
What do they do? Let's say they do want to be in the media. Let's say they do want to be in politics. What's your advice to somebody like that?
I think it's actually easy. I think it's education. Education is the key. Absolutely. I know some people are gonna be like, oh, but who's gonna help me with my homework? My mom doesn't speak English, my dad doesn't speak English, so who's gonna help me do my math homework or my history homework? And I can tell you that I didn't have anybody, and I did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went to college and I did it. It was difficult, absolutely, yes, but at the same time, I think you need to be you need to realize that there are resources, and that's exactly what I did. I went there, and a lot of these resources are for free. And then if you're a minority, you have even more resources. And then if you go to your campus, oh, there's the Latino group organization, more resources. So it's a matter of being self-reliant and taking the time to look for those resources, because they are there for sure. So I say education is key. Look for those resources, take the time and effort to Google them, or to, if you're going to college, go on campus to, I don't know, whatever the, information,
Yeah.
So definitely education, and look for those resources, be self-reliant. Because at the end of the day, even wealth doesn't last forever. Education does.
I
And
love it.
that's something that my dad always told me. I won't be able to leave you a big house. I won't be able to leave you tons of money, but I'm leaving you education. I'm giving you education that's gonna last you forever. And I truly believe that.
I love that. I think I can attest to what you're saying because one of the major things that I learned just going to college in general is that building a good network around yourself is going to save you so much time and going to open up so many opportunities for you. So, just once I got out of college, joining, the local chambers of commerce and businesses, then now I'm involved with the New York Young Republican Club. Like there's all of these little pockets of resources and influence that you can plug yourself into and kind of use that as a way to kind of catapult yourself into where you want to be, right? Whatever your goal is. So I definitely think that's great advice to give anybody, especially people who, let's say, don't have, an American background. So thank you so much for
Absolutely.
that. I do want to give you I'd like to give you the floor to kind of say whatever it is that you'd want to say. Tell people where to follow you, what you're working on, anything that you want to play.
All right. Okay. Cool. Well, I feel like I'm in a job interview. Seriously, trying to get the job. Please. What am I saying? So, okay. I work in LA. I've been a news reporter for the past 7, 8 years, and I think now more than ever, our job is so fundamental. It's without a doubt, how they always teach us that there's three branches of power. I believe there's four. There's four branches of power, and the media is one of them. We are so powerful. We shape minds. We shape the perception of a world. We shape the perception of absolutely everything. We shape the perception of race, of culture. So I think now more than ever, if you are trying to pursue journalism, you have this huge power, but at the same time, like this amount of responsibility that you need to take seriously. Because you need to remain self-accountant. Is that how you say it in English?
Accountable, self-accountable.
Got it. Exactly. There you go. You can edit that part. And you need to be self-accountable because at the end of the day, it's your ethic as a professional that you are letting the world know how serious you're taking your job. And I think if you're planning on doing that, you are gonna enjoy it, but you are gonna cry and you're gonna be so upset because you're gonna see injustice. And honestly, as a news reporter, you're only there to tell the facts. You shouldn't take any position, you shouldn't take any side, and that could be sometimes frustrating because you are seeing injustice in front of your eyes, but you are just there to say the story, tell the facts. But at the same time, a good journalist, if you're uncovering like corruption, you can totally change the outcome of a city. And I think that's what's kind of happening here in LA. I don't know if you're aware of what's happening with the DA Recall Gascon. There's been such great news reporting in regards of what's happening here, and that little by little, it's kind of shaping the way people are trying to recall him, and even Gavin Newsom. And regardless whatever your political party is, it's interesting how these things are unfolding in front of our eyes because the reporters are taking the time and effort to talk to people, to investigate. So I would commend you to do this career, to follow this career, but at the same time realize that there's going to be plenty of times that you need to distance yourself from your feelings and just stick to facts, because at the end of the day, that's our only job. We are not here to and for now, it's not a force. We are not here to give our backing or our support to any political party. We're just here to tell the facts. And you can follow. Well, I don't know what I was supposed to.
No,
I
that
don't
was
even
great.
know what I was answering.
No, that was beautiful. I was just asking, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you if they need to? Do you have any, kind of digital thing that you want people to follow? This is where you plug
Yes,
away.
sure, absolutely. Well, you can find me on Instagram. I don't have Twitter. I think I'm banned. I
I
don't know.
think you're the.
I've been
I was gonna
Probably,
say, I
I've been
think you're the
trying
only
to actually
journalist
log
without
into
Twitter.
it, and yeah, I've been trying to log into it and it doesn't let me, but whatever. You can find me on Instagram. My name, Viviana Serrade. It doesn't have any capitals or nothing. It's just Viviana Serrade. It's quite as simple as that, as you see it right down there, I think.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to just, give me some of your wisdom and just unpack these ideas with me. I'd love to have you back on sometime. You're always welcome. And I'm looking forward to see what kind of work you do in the future.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. And once again, all I can say, like in a brief summary, because I kind of like to talk, hence my career choice, right? All I could say to all the new Latinos, to all the immigrants, is that if there's a will, there's a possibility to make it happen. Do not follow into this idea of victimhood. Do not follow the whole victim mentality. You are not a victim. You have given this amazing opportunity to come to this country and follow and achieve your dreams. You know how sometimes people say, like, oh, the American dream is gone, it has disappeared. No, that is not true. For the people who actually want to make it and want to work, they will find it. They will make it. So do not follow into this tribe of victim mentality, and do not think that you are entitled to anything, because you are not. You are supposed to work hard to get it.
Yes.
You don't deserve anything just because. So my two advices: forget about the victim mentality and do not be entitled. You work for what you want. You just don't get it just because. You don't get it because you're a minority. You actually go and work and put the time to get it.
I absolutely love that. I think that is a great way to finish this episode. Thank you once again for stopping by. Just stick around. I'll stop recording.